Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. At just 18, Riley Parker, life takes a devastating turn when he is wrongfully arrested for a crime he didn't commit, is sent to a maximum security prison. He is affixed to a cellmate, Nathaniel Grayson, who is both intimidating and captivating. Initially wary, Riley begins to see glimpses of warmth and strength in Nathaniel. As days pass, Riley realizes that his feelings go beyond admiration and there is a fragile, unexpected, and forbidden connection between them. In a prison built on walls and rules, Riley wonders if it's possible to find love in prison. Chapter 1. It was the longest walk of my life. Every eye followed me as I moved down the cold corridor, flanked by 2 guards. Some men jeered, others muttered cruel things under their breath, and a few simply stared with empty expressions that made my stomach twist. I forced myself to keep my head down and my feet moving, repeating Jerry's advice in my mind. Don't fight. Don't stare. Do what they tell you. Be respectful. That's how you survive. Jerry had been here once, and he knew what it took to get through. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was the only hope I had. The guards beside me weren't rough. Unlike the ones who had transported me earlier, these men treated the task like routine. For them, it was just another day. For me, it was the start of something I wasn't sure I could endure. When we stopped at the end of the hall, I held my breath. Even with my head lowered, I saw the gray steel bars that would soon close behind me. This cell was no longer just a cage. It was my new home. I had already cried, already mourned the life I'd left behind. Now all that remained was acceptance. Still my hands shook. My chest felt tight. Nothing could change the fact that I was terrified. Jerry had told me the most important part of prison life wasn't the guards or the other inmates. It was the person you shared a cell with. A cellmate could either be your greatest protection or your greatest danger. The buzzer sounded. The bars slid open with a harsh grind of metal, and I stepped inside. The door closed behind me, sealing my fate. I slipped my hands through the slot in the bars, and the cuffs came off. And then I heard him. "What are you in for?" The voice was deep, calm, and commanding. I turned and froze. This wasn't the kind of cellmate I had pictured. He wasn't scarred or sneering. Instead, he reclined on the top bunk, lean and powerful, with sun-warmed skin and sharp features. A faint line of stubble shadowed his jaw, and his buzz cut gave him an edge of authority. His eyes, brilliant green, piercing and alive, locked on me, and I forgot how to breathe. He looked like he didn't belong in a place like this. And yet, here he was, my cellmate. For a heartbeat, I wanted to tell him everything. Jerry had warned me never to admit my innocence. In here, everyone claimed they didn't belong, and nobody believed it. But something about this man pulled the truth from me. "I didn't do what they said I did," I whispered. "I'm innocent." In an instant, his expression changed. Those striking green eyes hardened, sharp as glass. He sat upright, his back against the wall, and his gaze pinned me in place. "Listen," he said firmly. "Everyone in here says that. What matters is this. You and I have to share this space. You give me honesty, respect, and no trouble, and things will go smoothly. Understand?" I swallowed hard and nodded. "Why, yes." His eyes narrowed. "What charge?" My voice cracked. "A murder." For a long moment he said nothing. His gaze didn't leave mine. Then, slowly, he reached into the waistband of his uniform. My breath caught when I saw the glint of metal. He pulled out a makeshift blade and drove it into the edge of his mattress, where it stood upright, gleaming in the dim light. My entire body shook as he leaned back again, folding his hands behind his head, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. The message was clear. A warning. And I had no idea if I would survive it. Chapter 2. The first 2 weeks crawled by. Each morning the buzzer dragged me awake to the same routine. Shouting guards, hurried footsteps, the clank of metal. Each night I curled up and let the tears come. I didn't belong here among hardened men, rapists, drug dealers, thieves. I wasn't a murderer, and yet I was packed into a concrete box with all of them. The justice system had failed me, and some nights I wondered how much more of it I could bear. Jerry had warned me that time moves differently inside these walls. It'll feel like forever, he'd said, but you'll get used to the routine. The only part of those days that didn't feel completely bleak was yard time. I'd find a quiet corner, pull out one of the novels Jerry had sent, and try to lose myself in the words. When I couldn't read, I just stared at the sky and regretted every moment I'd taken it for granted as a free man. Now I soaked up small slivers of sunlight whenever the guards allowed it. The place felt a little like school. Bells that told us where to go, punishments for breaking rules, the same cliques and bullies, but the stakes were cruelly higher. Here, the cliques were crews with leaders who demanded loyalty. You couldn't go home to your parents at the end of the day. I kept my back to the wall in the yard, trying to stay out of the way. It made me stand out, but I figured the farther I stayed from the crowd, the less likely I'd be pulled into trouble. Jerry disagreed. He'd urged me to find a crew and stick with them for protection. I was still looking. Mostly, I had avoided everyone, except one. Nathaniel Grayson moved through the yard with the quiet assurance of someone used to being followed. He sat with his small group on the benches, deep in conversation with a few men. I watched him more often than I cared to admit, when he ate, when he lined up for the showers, when he stood by his bunk. He spoke little to me, and I left him to his space, just as he preferred. Sometimes I caught him glancing my way. I couldn't tell if it was contempt, pity, or something else entirely. After a few looks, I tried harder to hide my staring. I didn't want to give him a reason to be annoyed. A voice beside me made me jump. He ain't going to pick you just because you're his cellie, you know. I looked up. The man talking was shorter than the others, his hair in shoulder-length locks and a missing front tooth that flashed when he smiled. He chewed something, I guessed, and appraised me like he'd seen too much to be surprised. "Excuse me?" I said. He pointed toward Nathaniel with a lazy gesture. "Your cellie over there? He's not gonna invite you into his crew just because you share a bunk. So don't get your hopes up." "Invite where?" I asked, irritated by the vague warning. "Into his crew. Into a crew, period." He folded his back against the wall and began to explain, as if talking to someone who needed things spelled out. "This place runs on crews. Each crew's got a boss. See that big group over there? That's DeFox's lot. To get into crews like his, you gotta prove yourself, sometimes by doing something ugly. They're looking for the toughest." He pointed to another cluster. "Monty's crew sticks mostly with their own. Joel's crew, different mix. If you want in there, you usually have to replace someone. It ain't pretty." I felt sick. None of those ways sounded like anything I could do. I'd never be able to trade myself for safety the way they did. "What about the ones who aren't in crews?" I asked. If I couldn't join and I couldn't fight, what was left? "They don't last," he said bluntly. "No protection means you get eaten alive." Then he spoke about Nathaniel Grayson. He runs his own little crew, but they keep it small. He picks who he wants. If he doesn't invite you, you're not in. He's only took in a handful, real few, since he's been here. The man watched me, a little envious. "They got weight though. They're small, but they're dangerous in ways others aren't. They get stuff others can't." "Stuff?" I echoed, curiosity and suspicion warring inside me. "Contraband," he said. "Snacks, music players, little things that feel like heaven in here. People will do anything for a candy bar." He made the trade sound like currency, the kind of access that buys safety and influence. And they don't just get it for nothing. Information, favors, things like that. Also, they've got some guards on their side. He shrugged as if he hated himself for knowing. I followed his finger to the benches where Nathaniel's group sat and felt the familiar tug in my chest, an uncomfortable mix of admiration and something softer. I forced my eyes away. The man beside me, he'd said his name was, seemed to notice how my gaze lingered. "So, what if he never asks you in?" Ty asked. "What if you can't, or won't, do the things crews ask?" I didn't have an answer. I thought about my novels and the small comforts Jerry had managed to get to me, about all the things I still wanted that had nothing to do with crew power or contraband. I thought about Nathaniel, about the way his green eyes could go from bored to intense in a blink, the way he set rules without yelling, the way his silence filled the room with something like authority. Ty's words were practical, grim. Prison was survival, he said, and survival had its own dark rules. But watching Nathaniel from across the yard, I felt something else. Hope, maybe, or the dangerous flutter of possibility. I couldn't tell which yet. For now, all I could do was keep my head down, learn the landscape, and try not to let the walls close in on the small things that still felt like mine. I don't know, maybe he only chooses people with connections. Who knows? Either way, they're not untouchable. They still get into fights like the rest of us, and they're not the only ones with links to guards. It's only a matter of time before their luck runs out, Ty finished, his voice carrying a hint of envy. I looked away from him and back toward the group. My pulse quickened when I caught Nathaniel's gaze fixed directly on me. His face was unreadable, cold as stone, but his eyes, it felt like he could see right through me. Suddenly, I felt exposed under that piercing stare and quickly looked away. "So, are you in a crew?" I asked carefully, tilting my head toward Ty. "Yeah. I'm with DFox," he replied casually. My eyes widened. You did something bad to get in?" Ty smirked. "Do I look like the type?" he asked dramatically. Despite his height and wiry frame, I thought he did look more dangerous than he let on. I kept my mouth shut. "There are different ways to get into a crew," Ty continued with a sly grin. "People like us, we've got other skills. Sometimes you offer what you can, and that's enough to get you accepted." I frowned, uneasy. "What are you getting at?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Let's just say some people trade more than favors. That's why I'm over here talking to you. My crew thinks you'd be useful." Understanding hit me, and I shot to my feet, my heart pounding. "You mean?" I whispered, unable to finish the thought. Ty chuckled darkly. "You're fresh here, and some of the guys have noticed. They've decided you'd be a good pick." He lifted his hand and gestured toward his crew. A tall, heavily tattooed man broke away from the group and started striding toward us. Fear spiked through me. I stepped back, clutching my book like a shield. "I don't want trouble. I just want to serve my time quietly," I said, my voice shaking. Ty's expression hardened. "It doesn't work that way. You've already been chosen. Backing out isn't an option." My hands trembled, and the book slipped from my fingers. The man from DFox's crew stopped in front of me, his looming frame blocking out the sun. "Well, aren't you a pretty one?" he muttered, gripping my chin and tilting my face to the side as if inspecting me. "We're going to get along fine. What's your name?" I couldn't answer. My voice was gone. Then a sharp voice cut across the yard. "Hey, Beans. What do you think you're doing with our boy?" Beans' hand dropped away, and both of us turned toward the speaker. An equally muscular man stood there, clean-cut, no tattoos, but every bit as intimidating. He folded his arms across his chest, his eyes locked on Beans. "Your boy." Beans growled, looking from me to Ty. Ty only shrugged. "Yeah. Our boy," the newcomer said firmly. "Nathaniel wants to talk to him." Beans' eyes narrowed. "Since when is he part of your crew?" "Far as I'm concerned, he's fair game." He grabbed my arm possessively. "Nate invited him the first day he got here," the newcomer shot back. "So, unless you want things to get messy, let him go." For a tense moment, both men glared at each other. Finally, Beans released me with a shove, dragging Ty away with him. I bent quickly to snatch up my book, my hands still shaking. "Come on," the newcomer said. I followed him nervously across the yard until we reached Nathaniel. He was seated on a bench, calm and unreadable, like a man watching from a throne. The newcomer sat beside him, then gestured for me to take the empty seat on his right. I hesitated but slid into place. "This won't sit well," the newcomer warned. "DFox won't let this go." "I'm aware," Nathaniel said coolly. His voice sent a shiver down my spine. He glanced at me once before turning his attention back to the yard. I sat silently for the rest of the yard time, caught between fear and curiosity. Nathaniel didn't speak to me, Not even once. But the unspoken fact that he'd stepped in, that he'd claimed me, echoed louder than any words. That night, back in our cell, I lay on my bunk listening to him toss and catch the small rubber ball he always carried. Thump, thump, thump. The rhythm was steady, almost soothing. Finally, I gathered the courage to speak. "Why did you invite me into your crew?" The ball stilled. Silence filled the cell. Thump, thump, thump. I sighed. "If you expect something from me, I can't give it. If that's what you want, you might as well let me go now." The ball stopped again. His voice cut through the darkness, low and edged with warning. "Be careful with your words." "My name is Riley," I said, my voice trembling. "I just want to know why you chose me. I don't understand. I have nothing to offer." His reply was sharp. "Would you rather I'd left you to beans?" My breath caught. Slowly, realization sank in. "So, you were protecting me?" Nathaniel said nothing. But silence was answer enough. A smile spread across my face before I could stop it. "Thank you," I whispered. The ball started up again. Thump, thump, thump. And for the first time since arriving in this place, warmth bloomed in my chest. "Lights out," the guard shouted, plunging us into darkness. Chapter 3. The visiting room wasn't as full as usual, likely because of the early hour. This was my first morning visit since being locked inside the steel box, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. The quiet made the space feel colder somehow, but I was grateful I even had a visitor. Many of the inmates didn't. I studied Jerry's wrinkled face. It had only been 4 days since I last saw him, but he hadn't changed. Same kind brown eyes, same warm smile that had always felt like home. At the moment, though, he was watching me with concern, and that look alone made my eyes sting. Visits were always the hardest part. They reminded me of the life I'd lost, and I dreaded the moment he'd have to leave. "You're too skinny. You need to eat, Riley," he said. "The food here doesn't exactly inspire a healthy appetite," I replied with a shrug. Jerry reached across the table and clasped my hand. "You've got to eat anyway, son. You'll need your strength in this place." I nodded faintly. "Tell me what you've been up to. Made any friends? Are people treating you right?" he asked. I smiled a little. "You make it sound like my first day of school." Realizing his slip, Jerry flushed, his weathered cheeks turning red. "You know what I mean." I ran my fingers over the cover of the book he'd brought me. "Everything's fine so far. No friends. And as for treatment, no one's taken a swing at me yet, so I'll call that a win." Of course, Jerry wasn't fooled. He'd lived this life himself and knew how it worked. "I think I might be in a crew," I admitted. His brows rose. "What kind of crew? And how'd you get in?" "I don't know exactly. From what I've heard, they're the ones who can get things other inmates can't. As for how I got in, well, I think my cellmate's looking out for me. Yesterday, I was in a tough spot, and he claimed me for his crew. It got me out of trouble." Jerry studied me thoughtfully. "It's good he's watching out for you. But remember, nobody does something for nothing." I'd already spent a long night turning that over in my head, wondering why Nathaniel had stepped in for me. I had nothing to offer. More than once, I feared the answer, but I was determined not to let myself become anyone's property. "Don't overthink it," Jerry advised. "Just watch your back. Be careful, don't get tangled up in anything, and try to stay under the radar." I nodded again, grateful for his wisdom. "I know. I just wish. Visiting hours are over. Please make your way to the exit." The intercom cut me off. Around us, families stood, reluctant to leave. Jerry rose to his feet, his eyes reflecting the same sadness I felt. "Don't worry, Riley. The lawyers are still working. We'll figure this out. Don't give up hope and take care of yourself." My throat tightened as I nodded. A guard came to escort me and I stood. "I'll see you in a few days," Jerry promised. I watched him until he disappeared through the door, then let the guard guide me out. After a search, the books Jerry brought were checked and handed back to me. I hugged them to my chest as best I could with the cuffs on. I hadn't even looked at the titles yet, but I knew I'd like them. Jerry had raised me, in a way, and he knew my tastes better than anyone. The guards let me drop the books in my cell before leading me to the yard. A group of men were playing basketball with a deflated ball, while others lounged, smoking hand-rolled cigarettes. I wondered why the guards ignored it when smoking had been one of the many things we were told was banned. As always, I breathed a small sigh of relief when I realized no one was paying me much attention. Jerry had warned me to stay low, and after yesterday's encounter, I was determined to do just that. I imagined curling into myself until I disappeared entirely. But then came the question that had been gnawing at me all morning. Was I supposed to sit with Nathaniel's crew now? Or was I still expected to wander on my own? If I sat with them, maybe they'd welcome me. Or maybe I'd just be humiliated and told to leave. I spotted them in their usual corner. They were deep in conversation, but Nathaniel suddenly looked up. His eyes locked on me. He gave a small tilt of his head, an invitation. My cheeks warmed. Taking a steadying breath, I walked toward them, trying to crush down the feelings I knew I couldn't afford. Whatever my heart wanted, Nathaniel was dangerous, and I couldn't forget it. By the time I slid onto the bench beside the man who'd helped me yesterday, I'd managed to cool my expression. "Hey," I greeted. A few muttered replies followed. One man, an African-American with a sharp but friendly smile, stretched out his hand. "What's up, little man?" I hesitated. "Riley. My name's Riley." He nodded. "Eddie. Nice to meet you," I said politely. Eddie looked surprised but gave a short nod before turning back to the others. To my left, Nathaniel studied me. His expression was unreadable. I offered him a small, shy smile. My cheeks betrayed me again, flushing red. "So, you guys just sit around all day?" I asked. "Is there something else we should be doing?" Nathaniel's voice was low, steady, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Caught off guard, I shrugged. "What do you usually do during rec?" he asked, his piercing green eyes never leaving mine. "I usually just hang out in the library," I admitted. "We meet in the gym. Be there. I have an assignment for you." My eyes narrowed. "What kind of assignment?" "The kind that keeps you part of this crew," he said simply. Before I could respond, he stood and crossed the yard toward another group, Joel's crew, if I remembered right. The ones with reputations as thieves and worse. I watched uneasily as Nathaniel sat beside Joel. They spoke briefly, with a strange tension underlying their words. Then Nathaniel pulled a small, wrapped package from his pocket and passed it to Joel, who pocketed it without looking. They spoke some more, even laughed, then parted with a quick fist bump. Nathaniel strolled across the yard to a guard at the fence. They spoke in low tones. Ty had been right. Nathaniel had guards in his pocket. Whatever they were discussing, it was important. Then, suddenly, Nathaniel turned. His gaze met mine, sharp and unblinking. My stomach dropped. I turned away quickly, embarrassed to be caught staring again. Trying to recover, I asked the others, "So, what are you guys in for?" A bald man with a hard stare shot back, "What are you in for?" I turned away, feeling the weight of his eyes on me. Friendly bunch. By the time rec rolled around, my nerves felt raw. Jerry's warning from that morning kept running through my head. Nobody does something for nothing, and in a few minutes I'd find out exactly what Nathaniel expected in return for his protection. My hands trembled as my imagination ran wild with worst-case scenarios. By the time I stepped into the gym, I was sweating and sure my face was 50 shades of red. The others were finishing whatever half-hearted workout they'd been doing. When they noticed me, the joking stopped and a circle closed around me. Nathaniel stayed seated, calm and measured, and the rest of them watched. "What you need to understand first and foremost is that we're in the business of getting information," Nathaniel said, his voice cutting through the murmur. His eyes pinned me and I felt compelled to speak. "Information for what?" I asked, my voice small. "You don't get to ask the questions, boy," the bald man behind me snapped. His tone made it clear this was not a discussion. Nathaniel continued, steady and precise. "Your job will be simple. You collect information when we tell you to, you bring it back to us, and after we deem it useful, you deliver a small package back to the person who provided it. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't talk to anyone outside of what we tell you. Understood?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Hold on. the bald man objected. "We're not looking for a delivery boy. We need eyes and ears. Let him get into D-Fox's crowd, let him see things from the inside." Nathaniel's look froze him in place. "The packages must never be handled by anyone except the sender and receiver," Nathaniel said, as if stating a rule of the universe. "You get in, hand it off, get the information, and get out. Don't make yourself visible." "But I saw you hand your package to Joel today," I said, confused. "That exchange was deliberate," Nathaniel answered. "You probably noticed that no one in Joel's group actually saw it. That's on purpose. You won't call attention to yourself. You won't speak to anyone unless I tell you to. If trouble comes, the person you deliver to handles it. If not, be polite and leave." "Polite?" I echoed, incredulous. "That's it. Don't get caught," Nathaniel finished. "And don't reveal what's been said here. If anything you hear leaves this room, you'll regret it." The bald man's warning carried a clear edge. Nobody was joking. A hollow silence followed. "If you don't want to do this, you're of no use to us," Nathaniel said matter-of-factly. My hands felt clammy. "When do I start?" I asked. "You watch us for a few days," he replied. "Then you get your first assignment." "Now what?" I pressed. "Now you can go back to your books," he said, the ghost of a smile touching the corner of his mouth for an instant. The group parted to let me go. As I stepped away, the bald man called, "Hey, kid." I turned. "If any of this gets out, you'll wish you'd played your cards with beans." The warning was unmistakable. That night, back in the narrow quiet of our cell, the tension from the yard didn't leave me. I swallowed a dozen questions I was afraid to voice. Nathaniel was sitting on his bunk, tossing a small rubber ball from hand to hand in the dim light. The soft thump was steady, almost meditative. "I don't think your men like me much," I said finally. "This isn't high school," he replied. "Nobody owes you a smile. Nobody's trying to be your friend." I was surprised he'd answered at all. "But I'm part of your crew now," I said. "At least some respect, right?" He said nothing. The silence wrapped around me like a wet blanket. "Nathaniel." I tried again, softer. What kind of information are you gathering?" I asked. The guards' boots echoed in the corridor as they made their rounds. "That's none of your business," he said quietly. "None of my business?" Anger flared before I could stop it. "I need to know what I'm risking my life for." "No one's forcing you to stay," he answered coolly. "Say the word and you're out." "Out where?" I shot back. "Into Bean's hands?" "That's a choice." The idea made my stomach drop. I thought of everything I'd lost: college plans, family, the life I'd had with Jerry. Instead of classes and parties, I was figuring out how to survive in a place where favors were currency and loyalties shifted like sand. "Maybe I should go to Bean's," I said bitterly. "See how long protection lasts with him." The cell was suddenly very still. In a blur, Nathaniel sprang from his bunk and stood over me. My mouth went dry. For a terrifying moment, I felt the pressure of someone too close. He had something in his hand, an object that caught the light, but instead of striking, he pressed it to the bunk beside me, his face inches from mine. His breath was close. I could hear my heart in my ears. "What makes you think I won't gut you right now?" His voice was low and dangerous. "Go ahead," I said, louder than I meant to. "Anything's better than living another second trapped in this place." The knife, if that's what it had been, didn't move. For a long, suspended second, we stared at each other. Then Nathaniel's eyes dropped to my face and something unreadable softened them. The tension eased, the threat evaporated. He rose from the bunk and took a step back. The space between us felt charged, but the motion was not one of violence. He simply stood there, hands empty. "You're a foolish kid," he said finally, his voice rough. "Don't say things you don't mean." I lay there, breathing hard, feeling the aftershocks of fear and something else I couldn't name. Relief, maybe, or confusion. Nathaniel climbed back onto his bunk without a word, and the room settled into uneasy quiet. The guard's lamp blinked in the corridor. Outside, a distant radio murmured. As darkness pooled in the cell, I realized two things. Nathaniel could be brutal when he chose to be, and he had the power to protect me. Both facts left me uncomfortably warm and uneasily grateful. Chapter 4. A month passed without much trouble. Life in prison turned out to be more routine than I'd imagined. Every day looked almost the same. I woke up, did my chores like every other inmate, ate a bland breakfast, spent an hour in the yard, ran errands as the delivery boy for the crew, grabbed a little time in the rec room, ate again, and then returned to my cell. My cellmate, Nathan, wasn't much for conversation, but at least he tolerated me. The delivery work wasn't difficult. I just carried notes or small items from one place to another. Still, Nathan never let me out of his sight during exchanges. His sharp gaze followed me until the moment I handed him whatever I had. It was clear, he didn't trust me yet. He didn't watch the others with the same intensity, which made his suspicions sting all the more. The rest of the crew wasn't much friendlier. Eddie was the only one who talked to me, though carefully, never giving away more than he wanted to. The others mostly ignored me or watched me with doubt. I reminded myself I was still the newcomer. Trust took time. At least Nathan had softened a little. He wasn't talkative, but he let me ramble sometimes. I even caught glimpses of kindness from him, like that one moment a few weeks back. Flashback. After finishing a delivery, I was lounging in the yard. Without thinking, I sighed, "Man, what I wouldn't give for a bag of Skittles." I nudged Nathan with a grin. "What kind of favor would it take to get me some of those?" Eddie laughed, chiming in, "Forget candy, give me a burger, fries, and a milkshake." The others chuckled, but John, the bald guy who always seemed to enjoy cutting people down, scoffed. "Candy? You're locked in here with criminals, and that's your big dream? Grow up." The group laughed harder, and I instantly regretted opening my mouth. Nathan stayed quiet as always, his expression unreadable. But later that night, as I was reading in my bunk, he came back from his own visitation. Without a word, he dropped a small bag of Skittles on my book before climbing to his bunk. For a long moment, I just stared at the candy in disbelief. Finally, I climbed 2 steps up his ladder and held out the bag. "Want some?" He nodded, and I poured half into his hand. He made space for me on his bunk, and together we ate in silence. It wasn't much, but it felt like a turning point. We weren't exactly close, but that small moment meant something. It was enough to make me look forward to spending time with him, even if it was only sitting in the yard together. Which was why I noticed when he wasn't there. Nathan usually had visitations in the evenings, but this time he skipped yard time entirely. I hadn't realized how much I'd gotten used to his presence until I found myself missing it. Unfortunately, prison doesn't stay peaceful for long. That day, I didn't have any deliveries, so I was sitting in the sun when John and 2 others walked up, blocking the light. I straightened, uneasy. "We've got an assignment for you," John said. "All right," I replied, standing. "Just tell me where it needs to go." "This isn't a delivery," he sneered. "If you're part of this crew, it's time you earned it." I frowned. Deliveries were Nathan's orders, and he was the one I followed, not John. Besides, I had no interest in earning anything if it meant danger. John pointed across the yard to DeFox's crew. "See that guy Ty? You're gonna cozy up to him. Make friends. Find out what he knows." I hesitated. "And what exactly does he know?" John ignored the question. "Just do it. We decided you're not pulling your weight. Either you help or you're out." Eddie tried to intervene. "Sending him over there is risky. He's not ready." But John brushed him off. "The more people we've got on the inside, the better. Trust me." Eddie's jaw tightened. With a shake of his head, he walked away, leaving me alone with John's glare. My stomach sank. I swallowed hard. "Fine. What do I say to him?" "Be friendly," John said flatly. "Like you were the first day. Keep it casual." Easy for him to say. Casual wasn't exactly possible when I could barely stand the guy, and knew he blamed me for his own failures. Still, I had no choice. "You've got 45 minutes, someone muttered behind me. "Don't mess this up." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to walk toward Ty, who was standing alone at the edge of his group. His eyes narrowed the moment he spotted me. "Hey Ty," I said carefully. He sneered. I could almost see the bruise on his face from the last time. Punishment he blamed entirely on me. I took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize for what happened. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and called out for one of his crew. And just like that, I knew I was in trouble. I froze, staring at Ty with wide eyes before instinct made me step back. You humiliated me in front of my crew, and now you think you can just show up with an apology? He sneered, his gaze sharp and mocking. Before I could reply, another figure joined him. Beans crossed his arms and looked me over coldly. What's he doing here? If you think any offers still stand, you're mistaken, boy. I quickly raised my hands, palms out. No, of course not. I just wanted to apologize to Ty. That turned out to be the wrong thing to say. Beans' eyes darkened, and he stepped forward. His towering frame made me shrink back against the wall. This is the second time you've rejected me, he said softly, though the chill in his voice sent a shiver through me. There won't be a third. Before I could back away or explain, his fist came flying. Pain exploded across my nose, and I crumpled to the ground, gasping as blood filled my mouth. Shouts rose around us, but I couldn't focus. His blows rained down again and again, a kick slamming into my side. By the fourth punch, everything blurred. By the sixth, darkness swallowed me whole. When I opened my eyes again, I was told a week had passed. A week lost to a concussion, cracked ribs, and bruises covering me like a second skin. The days in the infirmary were mostly a blur of pain and silence. No visitors came. The doctor was kind enough, but it was a lonely recovery. A week gone meant I had missed Jerry's visit. I wondered if he even knew what had happened. Worse still, Beans was already out of solitary. He had served 3 days. Meanwhile, I could barely sit up without pain. I groaned as I shifted, clutching my aching ribs. The doctor walked in, clipboard in hand, and gave me a practice smile. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Been better," I muttered. She noted something on her board. "You'll come back daily for your medication. No strenuous work. You'll be on kitchen duty until you're healed." I only nodded. "When do I leave?" "As soon as your escort arrives." She smiled again before leaving, and soon a nurse dropped off my prison uniform. I dressed slowly, every movement heavy with pain. When the guards came, they cuffed me and led me down the long, cold corridor. I hadn't realized it was night outside, and disappointment pricked me. I had missed my one chance to see the open sky. At last, we reached my cell. Nathan jumped down from his bunk the moment the guards opened the door. As soon as my cuffs were off and the door clanged shut, he was there, hands gentle but firm as he tilted my chin, turning my face this way and that. His expression was unreadable at first, but I caught the tightness in his jaw and the anger simmering in his eyes. His gaze moved from my face to my arms wrapped protectively around my chest. He reached for the buttons of my shirt to check further, but I batted his hand away and lowered myself onto my bunk. The thin mattress felt like stone after the infirmary bed. "How are you feeling?" His voice was rough, but there was something else in it, something troubled. "Like Beans used me as a punching bag," I said. His fists clenched, and for a moment, the sight warmed me. Maybe he did care. I gave him a tentative smile. He didn't return it. Instead, he slid down the wall and sat on the floor, his back against the concrete, knees bent. His eyes never left me. "I could kill them for sending you into that," he said at last. I shrugged, wincing at the pain. "They don't think I'm pulling my weight. All I do is run errands." My tone was flat, not self-pitying, just honest. That wasn't their call to make. His voice was sharp. "Well, what can I do? Shout about how unfair it is?" I asked quietly. "This is prison. That's just how it is." My words sounded more defeated than I wanted them to. "I'm taking you off deliveries." My head snapped up. What am I supposed to do?" "Nothing. It's too risky." His gaze locked with mine, unyielding. "You're kicking me out of the crew?" His brow furrowed in annoyance. "Don't be ridiculous." I swallowed hard. "So, I just stay? Do nothing?" "Yes. But the others, what if they vote for a new leader?" "They can't overthrow me, Riley. Trust me." His certainty should have reassured me, but worry still gnawed at me. As he moved to climb back onto his bunk, I reached out and caught his hand without thinking. The moment he looked down, startled, I let go. "I don't mind doing the work," I said softly. "If it helps keep things smooth with the others, I'll do it." I'd do anything to protect his place. He deserved to lead. Then, to my surprise, he crouched beside me. His hand moved gently through my hair before cupping my cheek. My breath caught as I met his eyes. His gaze was softer than I had ever seen, his voice low and steady. "Everything will be fine. Get some rest." With that, he pulled away and climbed onto his bunk. The cell filled with silence. I pressed a hand to my cheek, still tingling from his touch. It struck me then. This had been the longest, most heartfelt conversation we had ever shared. Chapter 5. Nathan's POV. From the moment Riley walked through my cell door, one thought kept circling my mind. This kid won't last long in here. Every day I watched him try to put up a brave front, laughing with Eddie, ignoring John. But eyes don't lie. No matter how hard he smiled or how tall he stood, I could always see it, that flicker of fear mixed with quiet despair. And I couldn't help but wonder how long before the weight of it all broke him. I don't know what made me decide to look out for him. Maybe it was the sadness in his eyes, or the way his cheeks dimpled when he smiled. Maybe it was his stubborn bravery, or the sound of his muffled sobs at night when he thought I was asleep. Whatever the reason, something about him pulled me in, and the urge to protect him was almost overwhelming. I had rules for surviving this place. Don't get attached, don't ask about anyone's past, and never trust too easily. Rules that had kept me alive for years. Yet from the day Riley arrived, I found myself breaking every one of them. I listened when he rambled about his family. Sometimes, I even caught myself smiling at his stories. Without realizing it, I had let him in. He made me feel like I knew him, like the walls I built didn't matter anymore. It should have been just attraction, something I could ignore. But it wasn't. He made me care. And now, whether I liked it or not, I was determined to keep him safe. The incident a week ago only proved what I'd been thinking from the start. Riley didn't belong in a place like this. Seeing his bruised face had shattered my resolve to keep my distance. I was furious that anyone had dared touch him. I gathered the crew together. Make him feel welcome. If he never lets his guard down, he'll never trust us fully. John, of course, was the first to speak up. Why do we even need him? The kid's useless. My fists clenched. Yeah, Nathan, another chimed in. Why waste time on him? He won't survive without us, I said simply. John shot back. And how is that our problem? We have one goal. You need to focus on that and cut him loose. I met each of their eyes, anger rising. Since when do we turn away from someone who needs help? Yes, we have a mission, but that doesn't mean we lose our humanity. The fact that you've forgotten that proves you've been in here too long. That shut them up for a moment. Then John pressed further. Even if we protect him, what happens when we're gone? The others will come after him, and he'll have no one. You'll only be setting him up for worse. His words hit harder than I wanted to admit. It had crossed my mind, but I pushed the thought away. I'd deal with it when the time came. You're wrong, I said firmly. Riley stays. He's part of this team. Anyone who disobeys will answer to me. I left them in silence, though John's warning stayed with me. He wasn't entirely wrong. We'd been undercover for 2 years now, and we were close to finishing the mission. This wasn't the time for distractions. But I hadn't joined the Bureau just to complete assignments. I had joined to help people. And I couldn't ignore Riley, not when he needed someone most. I reminded myself, help him, but don't get attached. Still, every time I thought of that kiss, the way it had caught me off guard, the heat of it, I knew that was easier said than done. It was a mistake, I told myself. It wouldn't happen again. With that thought, I headed to the library, where I knew Riley liked to spend his free time. He was so caught up in a book that he didn't notice me until I cleared my throat. When he looked up and saw me, color rushed to his cheeks. The boy's feelings for me were written all over his face. Riley's POV. A grin spread across my face before I could stop it, and I felt my cheeks warm. Hi, I said softly. Nathan only gave a small nod before sitting across from me. His eyes flicked to my bruises, the same way they had since the night before, and the silence between us grew heavy. I cleared my throat. "So, what are you doing here?" Normally, he only showed up during rec time if he had an assignment for me. "Beans wasn't in his usual spot today," Nathan replied calmly. "Something told me he'd be here." I was right. I frowned and followed his gaze over my shoulder. Sure enough, 3 tables away sat Beans, flanked by 2 guys. Their eyes were locked on me, and while his friends looked bored, Beans' stare was full of malice. I stiffened, fear rushing through me. I hadn't even noticed him come in. My fingers curled around my book as if it could shield me. I turned back to Nathan, who was watching me with a calm, almost bored expression. "He's following me?" I asked quietly. "You're the reason he was sent to solitary," Nathan explained. "He just wants payback." I stared at him in disbelief. "You say that like it's justified." He only shrugged, leaving me speechless. My mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "He wants me dead." The words slipped out, half hoping Nathan would deny them. Instead, he gave a small nod. "Relax," he ordered calmly, just as panic threatened to overwhelm me. "All you need to do is avoid him," Nathan said, his tone steady. I almost rolled my eyes. "It's not that easy. I can't avoid him forever. Sooner or later, he'll corner me. And then what?" Nathan's answer eased my fear. "I'll handle it. Just stay clear of him long enough for me to deal with it." I nodded, clinging to the reassurance. If Nathan said he'd take care of it, then he would. Still, when I glanced over my shoulder, dread flickered through me, forcing my eyes back to the table in silence. The quiet stretched between us until I finally whispered, "Nathan?" His striking green eyes lifted to meet mine. I hesitated before lowering my voice. "Has anyone ever escaped from here?" His brows furrowed, but his expression remained unreadable. "No." "Why?" I shrugged, though it was a poor attempt at pretending. He leaned closer, his gaze sharp. "If you're thinking what I think you are, forget it," he said firmly. "I'm not planning anything. It was just a question." I lied. "Listen closely," Nathan warned. "This place is impenetrable. If you even step into a restricted area, they'll stop you before you take another step. Don't test it. Don't even think about it." I sighed, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "Don't tell me you've never thought about escaping. Everyone must have." His frown deepened. "I'll never understand people who risk everything to break the law and then try to run from the consequences. You got yourself here. Now you need to see it through. Do your time, get out, and maybe you'll learn something from it." Anger flared hot in my chest. I didn't get myself into this mess. I'm innocent. I don't belong here. If I'm desperate to get out, it's because I deserve to. Nathan shook his head with disbelief. "Innocent? You're still holding on to that? If I had a dime for every time someone said that." "Forget it," I snapped bitterly, turning away before I said something worse. The anger drained quickly, leaving only emptiness. Nathan must have noticed the change because his expression softened. "I should be at university right now," I muttered. "I wanted to study criminology. Imagine that, learning about criminals while becoming one in the eyes of the law. How ironic." The words cracked with both anger and grief. Nathan's voice gentled. "Just don't do anything you'll regret, Riley." "I won't spend the rest of my life in this place," I said with quiet resolve. "One way or another, I'll find a way out, even if it kills me." I pushed up from my chair and walked away, not daring to look back. He didn't stop me. That night, the steady thump, thump, thump of Nathan bouncing a ball in his hand filled the silence of our cell. It didn't calm me. If anything, it only heightened the storm inside me. Everything from the past week, the threats, the bruises, the words we'd exchanged, crashed down on me all at once. The thought of never getting out, of living and dying as a criminal when I wasn't one, was unbearable. The weight of everything I missed, my family, my freedom, the life I should have had, pressed so heavily on my chest that I could hardly breathe. Tears built until they spilled over. At first, I sniffled quietly, but soon the sobs came hard and fast, muffled into my pillow. I cried until my eyes burned and my throat ached. Through it all, Nathan said nothing, but I could feel his presence like a steady heartbeat nearby. When I had no tears left, I curled into a ball, facing the wall. My voice trembled. "Nathan?" "Yeah." His reply came instantly, though his voice sounded hoarse. What are you in for?" The pause. "Nothing you need to worry about, kid." We fell silent again. "Sometimes I feel like I'm losing my mind," I whispered. "How did you deal with this when you first came here?" "I just kept telling myself I'd get out one day. All I had to do was endure." His answer felt hollow. "I'll be out when I'm too old for it to matter," I said bitterly. "I won't go to college. I won't have the chance to sit in a bar with my friends. I won't fall in love properly. I won't live any of it. My whole life will pass by behind these bars." Nathan's voice came low. "It's best not to think about those things." "That's all I can think about," I admitted, my voice breaking. Silence. "Nathan, I don't think I'll make it." The words tore from me, half choked by tears. Still, he said nothing. "I don't think I'll make it," I whispered again, more to myself this time. The tears spilled freely, soaking my pillow. I didn't notice him until the mattress dipped behind me. My heart stilled when I felt his presence so close. He lay down quietly, stretching out until his body was pressed against mine, the thin sheet pulled over us both. His arms slid around my waist, firm and steady. "I'm scared," I whispered into the darkness. His hand tightened reassuringly. "Go to sleep, Riley." I felt his fingers brush across my forehead, and something in me loosened. Exhaustion finally overcame despair, and little by little, I drifted into sleep, held safely in his arms. Chapter 6. His eyes never wandered far from me the next day. I felt them on me with every step I took, and I liked it. It comforted me to know he was watching, that he cared. Even though Nathan tried to hide his concern, I could sense it, and it left a quiet warmth in the pit of my stomach. The breakdown I'd had the night before was behind me, and I was slowly returning to myself. Later, I'd be meeting with Jerry, which was always something to look forward to. In here, that was about as exciting as it got. Even Nathan's crew seemed different. With the exception of John, the others had shifted overnight, starting conversations with me, even offering small smiles when I said something that earned one. I didn't need to ask, I knew Nathan had something to do with it. Still, it was nice to sit with them and not feel like I wanted to disappear. No one mentioned that I was no longer making deliveries. The weight of that stress lifted along with everything else. And today, no one seemed focused on business anyway. I didn't ask why, they weren't offering explanations, and I didn't want to jinx the change. "Seriously though, Riley, when are you gonna tell us your story?" Eddie asked casually, though his eyes were sharp. "My story?" I echoed, trying to play it off. By now, everyone nearby was tuned in. I shifted uncomfortably. "Why you're here," Eddie clarified. "I heard it was murder. Never thought you were the type, so what happened?" I flicked a glance at Nathan. As usual, he kept his eyes on the yard, uninterested. "I don't want to talk about it," I said firmly. Eddie studied me for a long moment before smirking and letting it go. I didn't return the smile. Instead, I slid off the bench and sat beside Nathan, staring at the yard like he did. If they wouldn't believe me when I said I was innocent, what was the point of explaining? "You mind if I come to the gym with you guys during rec today?" I asked Nathan quietly. "There won't be rec today," he replied flatly. I frowned. "What do you mean? We have it every day." "Not today. By then the whole prison will be on lockdown." "Lockdown? Why?" "Because there'll be a fight." He finally looked at me. "A big one." Then he turned back to the yard. "But how do you know?" "I pay attention," he said simply. The tension in his shoulders told me to stop asking. So I did, though my palms were sweating with unease. When the guards came to escort me to visitation, I hurried along. Jerry was already waiting in his usual corner, a stack of books in his hands. Just seeing him made the warmth in my chest return. Happiness, that was the word for it, and it only grew whenever I saw him. He grinned when he noticed me, but his smile faltered when his eyes caught the fading bruises on my face. We hugged briefly before sitting down, the guard keeping a careful watch from a short distance. "Riley," Jerry said softly, reaching toward my cheek. I pulled back slightly, aware of the guard. His concern deepened. "I told you to stay out of trouble. And you told me to join a crew," I reminded him bitterly. "They're the reason for this." Jerry flinched and I quickly shook my head. "Don't worry, it's handled now. Trust me." I gestured to the books. "These for me." His grin returned as he slid them over. As always, he'd pick titles I'd like. We sat in comfortable silence until I asked quietly, "How's Mom?" He sighed, and I already knew the answer. She hadn't wanted anything to do with me since the conviction. The reminder stung, but Jerry tried to soften the blow. "She'll come around when the truth comes out. Don't give up hope." I nodded, but inside, I felt another piece of me crumble. "We're working on it, Riley. The lawyers pushing for an appeal. The investigators still digging. You don't belong here and we'll prove it." His voice carried hope, and like always, it made me want to believe. "So, what's new on the outside?" I asked with a small smile. "You're not missing much," Jerry said. "What about you?" "What's new in here?" he countered. I hesitated, then confessed, my cheeks warming. "I think kind of like my cellmate. And maybe he likes me too." "Your cellmate?" he repeated slowly. "Nathan?" I nodded, grinning despite myself. Jerry studied me, then smiled. "If someone here makes you smile like that, hold on to it. But Riley, this is still prison. Be careful. No matter how much you think someone cares, don't let your guard down." "I won't," I promised, even as my heart raced with quiet hope. "Nathan's POV. Where is he?" I demanded, scanning Eddie's face. He looked as confused as the rest of my crew. "I don't know, man. He could be anywhere," Eddie muttered. My chest tightened. I jumped onto the tallest bench to scan the yard, but with the chaos, shouting, running, guards pushing people into lines, I couldn't see him. A shot rang out. Instinctively, I ducked with the others. A guard yanked me back up roughly and shoved me toward a group forming a queue. Still, I twisted and craned my neck, desperate for even a glimpse of Riley. I didn't need much, just proof he was safe. But there was nothing. The fear pounding in my chest was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I'd been worried about teammates before, but this was different. This was consuming, heart racing, palms sweating, mouth dry. When my eyes met John's across the yard, I silently asked if he'd seen Riley. His shrug cut me deeper than I expected. "Please let him be safe." The words became a prayer on my lips, repeated over and over to a God I hadn't spoken to since childhood. Riley's POV. "So maybe you should tell me more about this Nathan guy," Jerry teased as he handed me the books. "Sounds like I'll end up bringing some for him too." I laughed. "I've never seen Nathan even look at a book. I don't know about that. Besides, he can." The sudden wail of the siren cut me off. I slapped my hands over my ears as Jerry did the same. "This is a lockdown. All prisoners return to cells. Visitors, please exit in an orderly fashion," the speakers blared. A guard pulled me from my chair, quickly cuffed me, and pushed me down the hall. I barely caught Jerry's worried expression before he disappeared from view, the books still clutched in his hands. The block was chaos, alarms screaming, men shouting, guards barking orders. By the time we reached my cell, I saw Nathan pacing inside. His head snapped up only when the door clanged open and I was shoved in. I stumbled, nearly falling, but his arms caught me. For a split second, I was wrapped in his embrace, tight, grounding, protective. I pressed my face into his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. But as quickly as he'd pulled me close, he pushed me back. His eyes were blazing. "Where were you?" His voice was sharp, almost panicked. "I had a visitor," I answered honestly. He froze, the tension draining from his face. For a moment, he just stared at me as if processing. Then it hit me. "You were worried, weren't you?" I asked softly. He scoffed, turning away with an eye roll, but I wasn't convinced. I grabbed his arm before he could climb to his bunk. "Why is it so hard for you to admit it? It's okay to worry about someone you care about," I pressed, searching his face. Nathan shook his head. "Give me a break, kid." With that, he climbed onto his bunk, lying flat on his back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. I sighed, pulling off my boots and splashing water on my face at the sink. But even as I got ready for bed, my thoughts churned. Why should I always be the one to step back? Nathan might never admit how he felt, but that didn't mean I had to wait forever. He'd shown me glimpses, like that kiss. There was something there. So why not take a chance? What was the worst that could happen? I was already in prison. With a deep breath, I walked toward his bunk and placed my foot on the first rung of the ladder. It was time to stop waiting and show Nathan how much he really mattered to me. Chapter 7. I think my boldness stunned him more than anything. When I climbed onto his bunk, Nathan didn't say a word. He just froze, eyes wide, as I hovered above him, unsure of what to do next. That's when he finally snapped back to himself and pushed me off, roughly, but not cruelly. "What do you think you're doing?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. I flinched but steadied myself. I'd been brave enough to climb up here. I could be brave enough to speak. "I want to stay here, with you," I said, the words trembling out. He studied me, his green eyes unreadable. "What's wrong with your bunk?" he asked, his tone still hard. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "The only thing I can do down there is sleep." My voice came out barely above a whisper. He understood instantly. With a heavy sigh, he swung off his bunk and landed on the floor. Then, to my surprise, he tugged me down too, steadying me when I stumbled, only to guide me back onto my own bunk with a thud. "This is prison," he said firmly, his voice low but full of tension. "Not a place to play games." His words cut deep. "Don't say it like that," I managed, my voice steady despite the sting in my chest. He sighed again, softer this time. "Riley, you don't really know what you want. But trust me, it's not this." He gestured vaguely between us. "Yes, I do," I shot back, my courage sparking. "I have a mind of my own." "Then use it," he replied, shaking his head. "This isn't something you should get caught up in." "Why not? I know you're attracted to me. Don't bother denying it." My cheeks burned as I said it. "It doesn't matter," Nathan answered, glancing toward the barred door. "Look at where we are. You're desperate, and you're trying to turn our friendship into something it shouldn't be." "I'm not saying I'm in love with you," I admitted quickly. "I'm just talking about attraction." He stayed silent, his expression unreadable, and it only made my nerves worse. I was putting myself out there in a way I'd never done before, risking everything, and for a moment I thought he might give in. Then his voice came, quiet but firm. "And I'm saying no. I'm not interested." I jumped up, my voice cracking. "Of course you are. What about that kiss?" He stepped back. "That was a mistake." I laughed bitterly. How cliché. Why do people always run the moment something real happens? "You've read too many stories," he replied evenly. "If I kissed you, it was nothing more than that. A mistake. Now drop it." His words stung, but I wasn't ready to give up. "Then tell me why," I pressed. He raised a brow. "Why what? Why I won't let this happen?" "Yes. Because this is prison," he said flatly. "It's not the place to start anything. And even if it was, what if I had something? A sickness? Did you think about that?" "Do you?" I asked quickly. "No." "Then what's the problem? Who cares if it isn't ideal?" I muttered. "It's not just about that for me anyway." I didn't say the rest, that I'd hoped closeness would grow into something deeper, the way it already had for me. Nathan looked away. "I'm not going to do this, Riley. It's not going to happen." "Fine," I whispered, my frustration boiling. "Then how about a kiss? Just one." He gave me a suspicious look. "One kiss and then you'll drop it?" "One kiss," I lied. "No. Why are you being such a coward?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. He didn't lash out. He just stood there, quiet, unreadable. "One kiss," I whispered again, stepping closer. When I was finally in front of him, I placed my hands gently against his chest. My heart raced, but I didn't back down. He inhaled sharply, then caught my wrists, holding me still. "One kiss, right?" he asked, his voice unexpectedly soft. For the first time, I saw something vulnerable in his eyes. something that made me feel less like the kid chasing after him and more like the one in control. "Just a kiss," I whispered, assuring him. Nathan hesitated, but after a moment he let my wrists go. My hands rested gently on his chest, and for a heartbeat, it felt like time froze. His eyes darted away as though he was fighting with himself. If I didn't know better, I would have sworn he was nervous. I didn't give myself the chance to lose courage. Standing on my toes, I touched his chin, guiding him to meet my gaze the way I'd seen in those cheesy romance movies. Only this time, it didn't feel cheesy. It felt terrifying and real. His green eyes locked onto mine, and I drew in a sharp breath at their intensity. "Relax," I murmured, trying to sound braver than I felt. To my surprise, he smiled, just a flicker, but enough to steady me. And then, slowly, Nathan leaned down, and his lips met mine. It was like fireworks went off behind my eyes. My heart raced, my chest tightened, and for a moment, the prison walls around us disappeared. There was only him, and the way his kiss made me feel like I was alive again. When he finally pulled back, his voice was unsteady. "Just a kiss, right?" "Not yet," I breathed, refusing to let go. Our lips found each other again, more urgent this time, as though neither of us wanted the moment to end. His arms wrapped around me, lifting me onto my toes so we could stay close. My hands clung to him, desperate, afraid he would slip away if I didn't hold on. Then, as quickly as it had begun, Nathan pulled back, pressing his forehead to mine. His voice was rough with emotion. "We shouldn't." "Then why does it feel like we should?" I asked, my voice shaking. Silence filled the small space, thick and heavy. He looked torn, as though part of him wanted to shut me out while another part was just as caught up as I was. At last, he let out a long sigh. "Riley, you don't know what this means. Not here. Not like this." But when his arms stayed wrapped around me, when he didn't push me away, I knew the truth he couldn't admit out loud. We stayed like that for what felt like forever, two people in the unlikeliest of places, clinging to each other as if the world beyond those bars had ceased to exist. And in that silence, with his heartbeat steady against mine, something inside me shifted. It was more than attraction, more than comfort. It was love. I didn't say it, not yet, but I knew. I had fallen for Nathan, and there was no turning back. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.